book. You tell us stories all the time. You're going to write your first book. And so I had an idea for a book. And with my friend's help, we looked up all of the publishers that were in Canada that we could find, sent off resumes and a one-page overview. And I got lots of rejection letters. And then one came up and said, hey, Kevin, we love your writing. We love your passion. We don't want your story, though. We've got another book that we'd like to do, and we think you're the right guy for it.
Nice.
And so that's how that first book happened in the year 2000.
What was that book?
It's called Center Ice. It was all about the Smythe family who owned and ran the Toronto Maple Leafs from 1927 till 1971. Smythes.
So obviously you have research in your DNA, it seems.
I love doing research, for sure. I worked in the music industry, in publicity, and so I had to write all the bios there, so there was research involved. But just, the hockey gene was there all along. I had read more books than I can imagine even existed, practically. Every book that came out, every hockey book that came out, I bought it and read it, especially if it was Toronto Maple Leafs. And it just gave me a wealth of knowledge that was a foundation for what I've done over the years as well, which is really kind of a fun thing. But I just love the research part, probably even more than the writing part. So, yeah. Is it your turn to get on the swing now?
I'm not going on the swing. That's why you're on it. Let's go for a while. Show me the way here. There's quite a nice park.
Why don't we go down the path just to make it a little bit easier? And there's some benches, and it overlooks the lake.
So you're involved with the statisticians or history or something that was at the Hockey Hall of Fame. What is it that you're...
Yeah, I started off, so it's a strange story, but a wonderful story. I was working for working for a record company, working in the music industry, and I had an idea for a compact disc, compilation disc of various songs of music you would hear at hockey arenas. And so I took it to the boss, who really liked the idea, and we moved forward with it, but he said, go ahead and do it. Well, I'd never put together a compilation CD before, so I had to license all of the music and find the cover and all those sorts of things. So I went to the Hockey Hall of Fame to license a picture for the front cover of the CD. And when I was there, I got to know the people who were there, and we talked hockey quite a bit. And so, just continue on up. So they said, listen, would you ever want to volunteer here? I said, well, problem is I'm the vice president of the record company and I'm out a lot, so I don't have a lot of time, but I'm fascinated and I love hockey so much. So I'll come in one day a week. We have Friday afternoons. We are off on summer hours, so I'm done at 12 noon that day. And I will come in every Friday afternoon. And I came in and just to put some packages together, did some writing, did whatever they needed me to do. And ultimately, that record company was sold and went bankrupt. And I'd kept in touch with the people at the Hall of Fame. And at one point, I got a call from Phil Pritchard, who's the keeper of the cup, the Stanley Cup. And he said, look, I know you got a big job, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. We've got a job here to work on the photo files, the photography files here. And would you be interested at all? It's a contract. And I said, you're not going to believe this, Phil, but the company went bankrupt a week ago. And he said, well, when can you start? I said, I'll see you on Monday. So I started there. So I worked with the photography files for the longest time and was promoted. And they gave me a title that had to do with special projects. So I had to find new revenue sources for the Hockey Hall of Fame, which was fun. So I created a course that Seneca College picked up on hockey history. It's put together by the Hockey Hall of Fame. I put together a publishing department as well, and to publish books about players or parts of the Hockey Hall of Fame or whatever. And so it's all these sorts of things. So my job has been over the last several years has been the education and the editorial side of the Hockey Hall of Fame, and so that's what I've done for the longest time.
So I want you to tell me 3 stories that I know about already
Okay.
that I absolutely love. Somebody in diapers in Montreal seems to ring a bell.
So I always try to think outside the box to draw attention to the artists that I was involved with in the music industry. And we were having a terrible time with a band called Nirvana, a brand new album called Nevermind that was coming out, but there was a song on it called Smells Like Teen Spirit that we thought was a magical song. But we knew that it wasn't ready for the radio quite at that point because radio was playing what I'll call hair bands, things like Cherry Pie by Warrant and Mötley Crüe and things of that sort, cartoon rock in many ways at that era. So radio wasn't ready to add this song. So I thought, how can I get attention for this band and this song? So I knew that the most adventurous of the rock stations out there was a station in Montreal called Chaume that I thought would be the right target. I knew them very well because I'd worked at their sister station in Montreal back in the day as a disc jockey. And so I planned it out that, okay, the front cover of this Nirvana album, Nevermind, has got a baby swimming in a swimming pool, chasing after a dollar bill, but that's a moot point. But so I thought, okay, what can I do to draw attention? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll dress up like a baby. Now, I was 40 plus years old at that point, but I went to a costume shop and got large diapers and a big soother and whatever else I could think of, a rattle and all kinds of things, a bonnet. And my grandmother had made some booties that I was going to gift to somebody at some point, but hadn't done so yet, and a quilt, and put it in front of the radio station, and had a boombox at that time. Had a boombox, and we had the song "Smells Like Teen Spirit" on a loop to play over and over again. And I got to the radio station just before 6 o'clock, and
You got to the radio station.
got to the radio station just before 6 o'clock in the morning and decided that I was going to stay there through the entire morning show till 10 o'clock because that would hit every one of the employees who was coming into work for their 8:30 or 9 o'clock shift or whatever it happened to be. So I did, but funny things happen, amazing things happen, and certainly not planned. It's on a street called Green Avenue in Montreal. And right behind where I was situated with this boombox was a high school, or maybe even a college when I think of it. And so the kids who were going to school wanted to stop and see what the hell that music was and why is this guy dressed like a baby out front? The sign that I had said, "Smells like Teen Spirit. This baby needs a home on Chaume." So, so the next thing you know, all these students were congregated in front of the radio station, and more came along, and soon the traffic was blocked on the street. And so the traffic copters and things of that sort were reporting that Green Avenue is blocked. We don't know what's going on, but there's something going on just around the radio station there. And they sent their news reporters out to see, and here's a guy dressed up like a baby in front of the radio station. So it caused a furor, and the newspapers came, and Music Plus, which was the equivalent of Much Music in the day, came over to get the story as well. Finally, the program director of the radio station came out, and a great guy. I knew him a little bit, Ian McLean, and he said, "Look, Kevin, stop it right now. Stop it now. I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. I'll put the song Smells Like Teen Spirit on our Make It or Break It show tonight. And if it does really well, I'll put it into a low rotation and play it in the evening and overnight. But if people hate it, you are never to talk to me about this song ever, ever again." Well, it went on the radio that night and drew incredible phone calls and requests, and it was added right away. And then they put it into rotation to play during the course of the day as well, not in the morning, but all day. So I was able to leverage that. Showm's supporting it big time. They're getting great phone requests to Q107 in Toronto, City FM in Winnipeg, CFox in Vancouver, all the big rock stations across the country. And we were able to get Smells Like Teen Spirit on the radio. I wasn't, the US was also doing their business too, but that was the way it started in Canada, was dressing like a baby. This baby needs a home on Showm. So that got me a little bit of infamy at the time.
I'm not letting you leave the music world stories just yet. I just read about a story that you were involved with a band in Toronto that was quite a collective and quite a group to keep collected.
Oh my goodness. I know which one you mean. It's the Mötley Crüe tour story. Here I was, a young promotion representative for a record company, and was allocated to take care of Mötley Crüe when they came to town. They were playing their concert at Maple Leaf Gardens on Sunday night, but they were coming in for press and publicity on Friday. So we split the boys up. We had the lead singer and the drummer going with our publicity person, and they were doing Much Music and different TV stations. I was taking care of newspapers and radio at the time, so I had Nikki Six, who was one of the leaders who played bass, and Mick Mars, their guitarist. And so I got them, and so we set up all kinds of interviews. But through the day, we got talking about different kinds of music, and they were big fans of Atlantic Records music, things like Sam and Dave and Otis Redding and bands like that from the 60s. And I knew all about the bands from that era. It's a big part of my life. So we'd talk about it. So they kept saying, "You're effing awesome, Kevin." So they didn't say effing, they used the other term. Is you?
I'm sure.
Okay. "You're effing awesome, Kevin." But they didn't use the word effing, they used the actual term. So all day long, that's all they said to me. "You're effing awesome, buddy. You're effing awesome, Kevin." So we had a crazy day. We were supposed to go for dinner that night. And I don't know what happened. The drummer was going out with an actress named Heather Locklear at the time. And Heather had said that there was a great place in Yorkville that we should go to. So I told the guys, okay, I'll have the limousine sitting out front of the hotel at 6 o'clock, and we'll go to Yorkville. I made the reservation. We'll go to Yorkville. Well, when I went to pick them up, they weren't there. And I didn't know where they were. And so I drove to Yorkville, and they weren't there. I drove back to the hotel. They weren't there. Finally, the young lady who was in reception at the Inn on the Park Hotel said, "Are you looking for somebody?" I said, "I'm looking for a band here, a band called Mötley Crüe." And she looked around and whispered, "They said they bolted." And I said, they bolt? Okay, they've left. Okay. Well, I had no idea where they were, but the problem was we had an interview at midnight that night on Q107 radio. A live interview was supposed to be 20 minutes. So I went back and forth between Yorkville and the hotel. Finally, I went to where the radio station was located at Yonge and Bloor, the top of the Hudson Bay building, not the top, but one of the top levels there. And I sat there for a little bit, and I realized there were literally a ton of rockers that they're on the sidewalk and things of that sort. And as soon as we pulled up in the limousine,
It says that I've paid attention and learned from it.
Very good. I thought if we have to do it again, we'll do it again.
No worries. Okay, go.
So we pulled up in front of the radio station and saw a ton of kids there on the sidewalk. And they were all dressed like rockers and this and that. Well, when they saw the limousine pulled up, they put two and two together and figured, this is likely Mötley Crüe who are getting ready for the Q107 interview. They crawled all over the limousine. The problem with that was they had studs on their belts and on their hands and stuff, so it scraped not all of the paint, but a lot of the paint on this limousine. And the driver, who was retired and probably in his mid-70s at that time, was quite tearful at that moment, and that wasn't the end of the night for him. So I said, "Look, I'll be back in about 20 minutes, half an hour. You go ahead and come back and get me in half an hour." So he did. Well, I went down into the Hudson Bay Center to a place called Rock and Roll Heaven, and the bouncers were there. I was dressed in a sport coat with a dress shirt and was carrying a briefcase. Stupid me, but anyway. And he said, "Where do you think you're going, pal?" I said, I'm with the band. They, oh, geez, come on with us. So they took me to the VIP section of the rock and roll heaven place, and there they were. There's my band. The problem was they were so drunk and stoned. I thought, oh my goodness.
Okay.
They were so drunk and stoned, I thought, what am I going to do? I've got to take them up for an interview in a short period of time. Well, they had something called the surf Nazis. These were young men who were supposed to keep them sober and away from drugs. Well, the surf Nazis, who were just some guys from LA who happened to look preppy and looked like they were surfers, they were just as drunk and stoned as the band was. Anyway, I said, guys, we've got an interview to do. And they said, oh no, how are we going to? They said, look, I got to do it. It's a live interview. And they are expecting us at 12 midnight. So we loaded them into the elevator, the surf Nazis and two of the band members, Tommy and Nikki. And we went up to Q107, and it was about 12:15 at that point. So we were already late. And the announcer at the time, a guy named Joey Vendetta, went on the air already to say, oh, those darn Mötley Crüe guys, and they didn't say darn, they've stood me up again, and just, I don't know what I'm going to do here. I'm not planned. I had planned to have them here. Anyway, just then I buzzed the front door. Somebody came out, and I said, we're here for Joey. I've got Mötley Crüe. They opened the door and took me into the control room. And I told the guys before we got there, look, watch your language. Got to behave yourself, or they're not going to play your record anymore. Joey will lose his job, and I'll lose my job too. You're effing awesome. Don't worry, Shea. Don't worry. Well, within minutes, they had already sworn several times. They had pulled drugs and alcohol out of parts of their body. I have no idea where they had them hidden. And so Joey was imbibing too. He wanted to be part of the story. Anyway, it was supposed to be 20 minutes, 2 hours in, 3 hours in, and it was getting ruder and cruder and more disgusting, very candidly. And I kept trying to stop them. And finally, the surf Nazis said, hey, Kevin, come here with us for a minute. Show us where the music library is. Well, they took me to the music library and locked me into the office. So all I could do is watch through the glass and listen to what was going on at that particular time with the band. And it was awful. And finally, just after 4 o'clock, they'd had enough. Joey'd had enough. He was supposed to be off the air at 2, but he continued on. And finally, the guys came out, and I said, come on, guys, I'm going to take you back to your hotel. I've got the limousine outside waiting. They said, oh, don't worry, we got our own limousine. I said, okay. But they said, but we need to come down a little bit. Is there some place where we can go to get a beer? Oh, you guys don't need a beer.
Okay.
I said, you guys don't need another beer. They said, we need another beer. We got to come down. So I called down to the bar, and the manager there, a guy named Gareth Brown, was counting up the receipts for the night and doing whatever it is that he needed to do to tidy up for the evening. And I said, listen, by any chance, have you got a couple of beers in your little refrigerator in your office? He said, yeah, why? What's up? I said, I got the guys from Mötley Crüe here. They wanted to see if they could have a beer. He said, oh, come on, bring them down. He said, how long till you arrive? I said, probably 15 minutes. Well, he must have called everybody he'd ever known. Next thing I know, the place is packed and people are partying, and it's 4:30 thereabouts in the morning. Anyway, finally, Tommy, the drummer, got in a fight with somebody. He thought he heard something about his girlfriend that they didn't say at all. Somebody was asking about something else, but he thought he heard somebody denigrating his girlfriend. And so he leaped over at him, hit him in the nose, and clearly broke his nose, and there was blood everywhere. And when Gareth, the bar manager, saw that, he, get out, everybody, get out, because he was afraid if the police came that he'd be arrested, they'd shut the place down, etc., etc. So the bouncers threw everybody out really quickly. I tried to get the guys to leave. They said, we'll take our own limousine. I said, okay, I will see you on Sunday. You say, oh, you've been effing awesome, Kevin. I said, oh, thanks a lot. So I left them. They got back to their hotel. I saw them on Sunday. Hi, guys, it's Kevin, the effing awesome guy. And they acted like they didn't even know who I was. They put a show on. I said my goodbyes and watched the show, and went home at that point. So that's my Mötley Crüe experience. It was not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
I also read a story in your news letter that you send out. First, tell me about the newsletter and what you're doing with it.
Well, I'm experimenting, as we all are, with various things. But I write books. I'm working on book number 23 right now. But I used to put some of the stories on Facebook and would get some great feedback. And then I was introduced to something called Substack. And so I thought, you know what? These stories on Facebook are really long. People like them, but maybe that's not the best forum for them. So I put them on Substack, and I do send a link over to Facebook as well, should somebody want to read the story there. I don't charge for mine, but a lot of people monetize it by charging a monthly amount to read the stories. But I put them over there just because it's a vehicle for me to put the stories, and I can put more photos in and things like that. So that's what I do with that.
What's that Substack called?
I call it 100 Grades of Shea, as opposed to 100 Shades of Gray, and go from there. It's my way of being silly, but to tell these silly stories that I have from the various aspects of my life. Some are sentimental, some are funny, some are sad, but it's a place where I can exercise my short form writing as well, and put these stories up.
I've been reading these stories.
You are the one. There we
I
are.
love the one about a certain young lad with his head stuck in a
Oh.
railing.
Oh yeah.
So I guess you're sharing this now again,
Yeah.
in one different format.
Yeah, for sure. So I was probably 3 or 4 years old. I'm guessing 4 years old, living on a street in Riverside, Ontario, which was a suburb of Windsor. And I used to call on the girl next door. She was the same age as me. Her name was Nancy, and I would call on her. So, whenever I got up in the morning, I would, Nancy, and she'd come to the door. And if she had her pajamas on, I knew I had to come back later. Or she'd say, oh, yeah, come on in, or let's go, or whatever. Well, this particular day, she was taking forever. So I played around and, played in the flower bed for a little bit and patted some dogs and did whatever I needed to do. And then when I was still waiting for her, I thought, oh, wait a minute. We had the curly Q wrought iron buildings at her home. And I thought, oh, I wonder if my head will fit in there. Well, it did fit in, but it didn't come out. And so here I am, 4 years old.
Okay.
Here I am, 4 years old, on the neighbor's porch with my head caught in the black wrought iron railing that they had there, and tried to pull out, and I couldn't quite fit in. My ears would get stuck, my neck would get stuck, or my chin rather, and so I screamed. My mom lived next door, or I lived next door, mom was there. I screamed, Mom, Mom, little kid screaming, and my mom came running out to see what was the matter, and she sees her young Kevin with his head caught in the railing. And so she came over to see if she could help. She couldn't at that point. And then she said, I'll be right back. I'm going to go get some Vaseline. She went next door back to her house, our house, and she came back out, but she didn't have Vaseline. She had the movie camera with her, which is not like my mom at all. My mom was very much a very momsy mom, and she would have done anything to get her son out of there. But here's mom filming me as I'm stuck in this wrought iron building, or a wrought iron railing rather. So finally, I tried, and I, didn't get my head out. And finally, Nancy's father came home. He had actually been drinking. He'd been at a bar somewhere or a friend's house. So here's a man who had had a few drinks, taking a hacksaw and trying to cut this young boy out of it. And my mom let him do it, and he got me out safe and sound. But it's funny, and so that was the end of the story for all intents and purposes. But every once and again, I go home to Riverside just to look around where I used to live and stuff like that. And I always drive past the houses where I lived, where I lived and where Nancy lived. And I can see that the curly Q on the wrought iron railing is still gone. And there's probably been 10 people who've lived there in the meantime. But that's the story. But I got out of it unscathed.
A gem you want to share from your journey? What would you tell a younger version of you?
So I guess the idea is to follow your dreams. You have to be persistent. You have to work at your craft as well, but follow your dreams. And if your dream is to be an author, you can do it. Whether you are published by a book company or self-published or whatever, there are opportunities out there, and there are great stories to be told, great pictures to be shown, all these sorts of things as well. So I would just suggest that you work hard at it, be good at your craft, but follow your dream. That's the maximetto after all.